We normally record these sessions and then we share with everybody, especially those that can't make it.
Yeah.
So just for the benefit of everyone, we are now live on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. So
We normally record these sessions and then we share with everybody, especially those that can't make it.
okay. Yep.
Okay, we're good to go. Reverend David, do you want to kick us off?
All right. Welcome, everybody. As you can see, this is Basildon Side by Side initiative in collaboration with Basildon Council. And of course, as it says, it's a discussion. So hopefully, when we've shared ideas and spoken about Windrush Day, people have a better perspective and understand, the importance and the significance of the Windrush. So what I'll do now, I'll first of all get Rani, to share her thoughts on this subject. And of course, we will involve others as well who would like to participate in sharing their thoughts or probably asking questions. Because, in today's environment, when you hear immigration, you're like thinking, oh, no, go back. But with the Windrush generation, it was after World War II, part of Britain needed, help support development, skilled labor and everything. And they invited people from the Caribbean, of course, part of the Commonwealth, part of the British Empire. So they had a rightful place to be in England. So I'll let Rani start off the conversation, please.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see everybody here. Yes, what does Windrush mean? What does it actually, why is it so significant? Next year will be the 75th anniversary of when that boat, that iconic boat, actually pulled not so far away from us into Tilbury. And it carried not just Caribbeans, but it carried a lot of people who you wouldn't traditionally think would have been connected with Windrush. It carried a lot of Poles who had fought in the war. It carried a lot of people who were not of color. It carried a whole host of people, but there was one single thing that united them. They were excited. This was the end of the war. This was when they were promised a land of milk and honey. They were coming to the homeland. This is where they were told was mother. And so when you see the pictures of Windrush, you see them beautifully dressed, usually Caribbean. A lot of them were professionals, which is what was so shocking, really, when what happened after them. They were doctors, they were nurses, they were engineers. Some of them, there was one who was a pilot, and many of them fought in the war. But a number of them, as I said, came from the NHS. So they were nurses. And when they got off, they had a reception that they couldn't believe, because some of them were put straight onto buses and taken straight up to London, to places like Lambeth and Brixton, and others were sent further up north. And although it was originally, the first things that happened were people were very excited to see them, all of a sudden, there started to be terrible messages in windows. And those windows, because a lot of them were living in camps, almost like what's happening now with refugees and asylum seekers. They were put into camps. They were not given places to live. They were not given jobs. No matter how qualified they were put onto the trains, they were put on cleaning the roads and sweeping. But the worst, I think, were the signs that appeared in the windows. And those were no Irish, no blacks, no dogs. That was the category that Windrush, were all of us, Commonwealth citizens, people who come and who revered the Queen as our mother. This is what we were looking in the face, racism in a terrible, terrible way. But that was 74 years ago. And today there was a signed letter in the Telegraph, the newspaper. And this letter, I think, Reverend David, is very significant when we think of what is happening for Windrush 75. Because the letter said, let us say that this is not Black History Month. This is not a Windrush Day. We are here and we are citizens. So this is British history. We are Britons. We remember our culture. We remember the land of our forefathers. We look into the mirror and we are sometimes different colors. But don't forget, there are a lot of white Commonwealth. The Canadians are Commonwealth, the Australians, the New Zealanders. There are 54 countries. So today, where are we? Instead of sweeping the streets and working on the buses, if I look around us, we have a deputy mayor. Yes, hand up, please, councillor. Right. We have 2 doctors here. Where's the doctors? Hands up. Dr. Packer, where are you? That's it. We have people who are in every walk of life, who have made their homes here, and who I hope we have contributed something to the fabric of this country. So that letter was signed by a multitude of people and a multitude of charities to say, please accept that instead of giving us one day, instead of giving us 1 month, you integrate us. And I think there was a lot happening because Councillor Jeff Henry is on this, I saw, and he's one of the greatest supporters of us. I have never found him anything other than inclusive and supportive of anything I've taken to him, whether it's a problem or a suggestion. So thank you, Councillor Henry, for being on here. Put your hand up so we can see you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And so I suppose before I hand over to the next speaker, where are we now? We're looking at Basildon. We are Basildon side by side. We're inclusive. We look at people not because of their color, not because of their faith or the lack of faith. We look at them as human beings and we look at them as British. We are here. And you know what? When people say go home, I say, what? Back to Walthamstow? Because although I was not born here, this is my home. This is my home. These are my children, my grandchildren, and I hope I've contributed a little bit to the growth of this nation. And I hope every one of you feels proud to be sitting here today and celebrating the Windrush. So thank you very much for letting me speak, Dr. David, Reverend David, and over to the next speaker.
Oh, thank you, Rani. And it's important what Rani did say to us, to remind us, how far we have come as a nation. Because some people were not particularly welcome. So when you say no Irish, no blacks, no dogs, it had a negative connotation on some, but others, they didn't allow themselves to be affected negatively, but they still chose to contribute positively. And it shows that we can work hand in hand to make our environment a place whereby we can all flourish. Because they were invited, they were given opportunities, and despite the challenges, they've left a lasting legacy. And that's why people felt it a shame when they had to deport descendants of the Windrush generation. They felt, no, this cannot be right. In our time of need, these are people who turned up and they contributed. They didn't come to take, they contributed, so they deserved everything they got back from Britain because they were contributing. So it's a discussion. Rani's started us off. And of course, who would like to take the mic?
Don't all rush at once. Otherwise, you're going to get pointed at.
So it could be from any perspective you want to take the conversation from.
I think we, because it's a like a roundtable discussion, it's worth asking the question of what do we actually know about Windrush? So it's one thing for us to talk about Windrush, is another thing because Windrush has so many dynamics to it that it can be mistaken for anything, so to speak. And when I say anything, we can get into different conversations around Windrush. itself. So I think my opinion would be to ask the question from everybody that is around the Zoom table is, what is your understanding of the Windrush? What is your understanding of the Windrush generation?
So following on from the queue, Councillor Jason has given us who will accept the challenge.
Now, Reverend, yeah, can I just add to what Rani has said? I think Rani has wrapped it up nicely, but yes, I think if you ask people for what they understand, you may not get responses. But I think if I'm going to say, I'm going to give more information around Windrush, and that will help the understanding of people who probably just hear about Windrush, but they're wondering what is actually Windrush. Yeah, so I think just historically, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, yes, I think it's just, so historically, in 1948, there was this HMT ship that sailed from Australia to England via the Atlantic and docked in Kingston, Jamaica, to pick up servicemen who were on leave. I mean, this is how the whole thing about Windrush started. Actually, Windrush is, someone said, oh, it's the name of the ship that actually conveyed these people, the HMT Empire Windrush. And, there was invitation to England for professions like nurses, midwives, and this is post-World War II. There was a lack of workers, and they needed professionals to come and help build the country. And then so the ship brought nurses, midwives, auxiliary workers, cleaners, cooks, porters, and some laborers, factory laborers who were employed in the bus and the underground and rail services. And it wasn't just a trip. I mean, there were multiple trips to bring these people. But I think what happened was, the interesting thing is in 2018, it was this, this is the first time the scandal broke out, that people who actually came through this, through the Windrush route, were actually denied, wrongfully detained and denied their legal rights, threatened with deportation, and at least about 83 cases were wrongly deported from the UK by the Home Office. I think if you watched in the news, there was quite a lot of condemnations about how these people were treated. And a lot of them, in fact, a lot of their generation who still remain in England had no passport or no identity whatsoever. And the contributions of their parents who came by Windrush were either silenced or not recognized in any way. And so there's a lot of discussion on how this problem could be compensated, obviously, because the damage has been done. And obviously, we're all celebrating Windrush in June, because there's a history around that as well. It's been done to recognize the contributions of all these servicemen, all these professionals, to rebuilding United Kingdom post-World War, which had until 2018 not been recognized. So what we're doing today is actually to have this discussion around how these people contributed. In fact, actually, the journey was between 1948 and 1971. from the Caribbean countries, and they were all labeled. This is the generation is 25 years, so you can see that is far more than 25 years. So we're talking about Windrush generations. So, so we're here to actually discuss and enlighten ourselves how all this had happened all through the years and the contributions that were made by different servicemen from Commonwealth countries. It's not like Rani said, it's not just blacks, but there are mixed ethnicities. And Rani, I thank you for your contribution. You obviously, part of what we do in Cyberside is to recognize communities, do things together, and work synergistically. Work together to build our communities. And so the lesson from Windrush, obviously, the lesson we're learning is to recognize people who have actually contributed to the society in one way or the other, but also to celebrate our diversity in such a way that it will add positive values to our communities, our environment, the country, and and that is very important, because when people are at peace and working together, there's a lot of development. Unlike when people are working in different directions or socially isolated. So I'll let someone else speak, but this is just a background of why we talk about Windrush. So thank you for that, Reverend. Someone else can speak.
Thank you for that, Doctor. Because you see, Doctor lays out the historical context. But the thing is the fact that, you see, in today's generation, we're quick to jump from the historical context as to how it affects people today, because it all boils down to the fact that what opportunities are people given? And of course, the government of that time, they were brave enough to put that policy in place to invite people from the Commonwealth. And like Rani did mention, they were not very welcome in some quarters. So the government took a brave decision. And of course, you can tell today, we still find issues like that whereby, communities are kind of segregated. And like Doctor did mention, Basildon side by side, trying to bring communities together. But without the backing of government policy, it's going to be a struggle. Who else would like to chip in whatever perspective they want to come in the conversation?
Everybody's quiet.
Actually, well, that's a cue from Councillor Jeff to say something.
Everybody's very, very quiet. My perspective comes from being a person from somewhere else as well. So I'm from Ireland. We're from generations of poor Irish farmers that were either working somebody else's land to pay their bills, or we were serving in the army generations after generations. With the exception of serving soldiers, none of our family had probably left the county or the side of the mountain we lived on, much less left the country and gone anywhere else. My great-grandfather worked with a great many people from across the world, having served most of the Second World War in Lahore in India, and often tells the story of being completely surprised by seeing people with different colored skin for the very first time, and arriving in India and seeing mostly Indian people with Indian skin, lighter shades, and then seeing the very first African, or seeing the very first Jamaican with very, very dark skin, and wondering what on earth had happened, because he didn't realize that this was a thing. We didn't have TV, we didn't have internet, we didn't have those sorts of things. So he always talks about the shock and surprise at seeing seeing, you know, some of these people that he then went on to serve with for many, many years in the war. For me, I came here 38 years ago, and there was still a good bit of, we had a terrorist situation in Northern Ireland that lasted for quite a while, almost 4,000 people killed, and considerable hurt and upset. So for me, it was,
Oh, I know that now.
there was still evidence of that hatred when I got here, and that we didn't feel welcome. But one of the things that I find intriguing is that 1948 was an incredible period of time for Britain. You had a government that was passing legislation to create new towns. We were one of them. The NHS was born, and we brought, you know, on that first voyage, 500 people. We asked them, we begged them to come and help us. We're on our uppers. You know, we needed production to change. We were still on rations. We were gloomy and bombed out and burnt out and frankly knackered, and we needed all the help we could get. And I think it depends on what history books you look at, and it depends on who you talk to about their own experience of this. And I speak to a lot of people about this and other things, but I think initially there was this, you know, almost a starry-eyed glamour to the arrival of the Windrush. These beautiful, elegant ladies with white gloved hands and beautiful, elegant shoes that hadn't been bought on a ration book, fantastic dresses, very, very smart gentlemen with suits and ties, and not stuff that's been repaired 1,000 times or passed down or bought from a you know, a cheap shop or a flea shop. But the experience for most, I think, was difficult. I think it was harder than it needed to be. They were brought here, they were asked to come here, asked to come and help, and they came willingly, and they worked hard. And like a lot of people who've come here, they got a lot less than was promised in the brochure, but took at it anyway and made the best of it. And if they didn't get it delivered in their generation, they certainly tried harder to get it delivered in the next. And I think 1948 was a magical time. There's a lot we can learn from it, and a lot of great that came out of it. But sadly, there was a cost to a great number of people as well. So that would be just what it means to me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that, Councillor. So what I picked up in what you did mention, the fact that, you know, you mentioned coming from an Irish background, and of course, you mentioned the word hatred. And it's difficult, you see, because of this is something governments are not prepared for in their policies. All they want is that they want their country to work, and they invite people to come in. But the question is, how do you get communities to welcome each other? How do you get communities to work together? Especially when people see themselves as competing for the same opportunities, the same housing, the same jobs. It's difficult. But if you're coming as a tourist, you're welcomed, because you're coming to spend. So nobody cares your color, your gender, your belief, because you're coming to spend money. The very minute you say you've come to settle, it's a different ball game. So you find that we as citizens then have to help the government, because the government is limited in what they can deliver. They can suggest policies. So like now, the Windrush generation were invited. And of course, they are not the last people to be invited to Britain or have come as immigrants. And we've seen immigrants coming recently, and people are still thinking like, oops, should we welcome them? So the government welcomes people. It's now down to the populace to live side by side. And sometimes it doesn't happen very well. So you can see the importance of having an organization like Basildon side by side, whereby it's being positive and saying, let's appreciate what people bring to the table, and let's see how we can put it for the better use of the community. So it's something we all have to bear in mind. The government will keep on inviting. So tomorrow, you don't know who they're going to invite to be your neighbor. So we have to learn to live with our neighbors, but the government doesn't tell us how to live with our neighbors. All they say to you, if you get into trouble with your neighbor, then we're going to hold you accountable. So it's down to us to think of ways whereby we can walk side by side. And recently, Basildon side by side with their big lunch, celebrating the Queen, they were able to bring the community together. And those are things we need, not just in Basildon, in every county around Britain, whereby people take the initiative to bring people together. Because the government has the policy to make the country work. They bring people together, not necessarily having to work together, as long as you do what's expected of you. If you're a nurse, if you're a cleaner, if you're a doctor, just do what's expected of you. So it's down to us to have initiatives whereby we can help ourselves integrate, because it's painful when you go somewhere you're not welcomed. People can handle it, but it is painful. And that's why we give credit to the Windrush generation, because we can see the tenacity and their strong will to make Britain their home. So we're thankful for what they've done. And of course, well, I better yield for another person to chip in. People have their cameras off, so I think we're running out. It will soon be the Deputy Mayor's turn.
I'll chip in a little bit.
Okay.
I do agree with everything that you have said so far, in terms of working side by side with communities. And I think that we also need to remember that the British Nationality Act actually came in, during that time because of those that were coming over. So that anyone that lived in the UK or any of the British colonies or the Commonwealth had the same rights to live and work in Britain at that time. And it reminds me a little bit of Dubai at the moment. A lot of workers from India, China, all around the world, and Africa, they all come there to help to grow the country. And that is what those that came with Windrush did with Britain at that time. And I think it's important to remember that it was built due to their tenacity, due to the skills that they had. And currently at this moment in time is very often seen as, go back to where you come from because of being another color. Whereas, we need to remember the root of everything that happened after the war, those that came to actually help build up Britain again. And it's so important to realize that, together you can achieve so much more. And I think that's like the acronym of team, isn't it? Together, everyone achieves more. We have so many different skills, so many different things that we can bring to the table when we work together, and that's what, Basildon Side by Side is about. This is what other communities need to be about, working in one together. And obviously remembering those that came and went through such a difficult time, when they came from that ship. And obviously I know that the British Nationality Act was then changed afterwards, after a few years, because I think with Britain, we like to be the ones that, yes, we invited these people over, those that skills to come and help us, but then also we want to change it because we want to have the best immigration laws. And I think it's remembering that fine line between the two of them. So that's the little I wanted to kind of, just add into this.
Oh, thank you for that, Shantae. Because, when she did mention the fact that, when they came, they found things difficult. It just brings to mind myself, because I was born in Hammersmith, and of course, I went back to Nigeria when I was about 2, and I came back in the end of 1995. So, of course, I used to go to church and everything. And then I decided to train to become a priest. I was in St. John's, Stratford. I used to live in East London. And then I was accepted to go train. So I went to Cambridge. And of course, Cambridge, predominantly white. And I remember one day, I was in town, and I was just like looking around. And I was like thinking, goodness me, I can imagine what I've been like for the first Black person to turn up here. Not that, of course, I was welcome, but I could just imagine thinking, wow, what will it have been like? Because, you go some places, they look at you like you're exotic. Like, you've come, where have you come from? And the truth be told, because you see, this is what happens. When we don't tell it as it is, people don't get it. I remember the story of a Black lady who was working with children, And one of the child walked up to her and said, "Oh, your color is dirty. You know, your color is dirty. Does it not clean off? Does it not clean off? Your color is dirty." You know, so you can imagine what they will have had to go through. The Britain they went through is different from the Britain we are going through. Because of them, we can stand. Because of them, because of the effort, because people have seen the injustice they faced. And that's why I say, you know what? People coming after them, no, we can't be nasty to them. Because everybody has the conscience. We're all competing for resources and everything. And that's why we have to give credit to Britain. Because people say Britain is racist, Britain is racist, Britain is racist. Wait till you go to other places in Europe, and then you will know what racism really is. You know, I'm not saying Britain gets 100%, but wait till you go to other places. Look at what happened in Ukraine recently, or what is happening. There were some Black people in Germany. If they tell you about their horrific experiences, having to be strip searched, meanwhile, other people who are Caucasians were let go. So you can see when we look back, I for myself, when I look back to the Windrush generation, and I'm thinking, goodness me, what they had, the emotional scar, the trauma some people have. So that's why sometimes, you see, in some Black communities, there's the mental health issue. It's just like children, you go to the playground and nobody wants to play with you. You can just imagine what it's like. And that's why we have to understand when some people want to be with people who look like them. We have to understand that because they've been scarred by other people who don't look like them. But what we are saying is that we have to help society heal. But is that government policy? All they're talking about was the GDP, was the economy. So we who bring other things to the table, we have to bring it to the table because we don't want a country or borough that is divided. We want to bring despite our experience is negative, we want to turn it into a positive. So thank you, Chantal, for reminding us the fact that, you know, they did have a difficult start. Who wants to chip in from your perspective as you see it? We'll also be getting to the deputy mayor. Well, if nobody wants to chip in, I think we better give a drum roll for the deputy mayor.
I don't know about drum roll. I don't know about drum roll. But, you know, I've got to say one thing. I think the first year that Windrush was acknowledged as a Windrush Day in the UK, I had to look back and say, my God, I had to go back and say, what is this all about? Because I didn't know about Windrush migration. I didn't know about, I suppose the history wasn't covered in school. I went to school in the UK all my life. And as they say, Black history is not taught in schools. And I didn't know about Windrush. And I thought 2018, and I don't know about Windrush, what a disappointment. And at the time, I think I went back and I did some research and I felt so, it's when you read stories like that, that you actually feel privileged for what you enjoy in the UK, for what I enjoy in the UK, because I think I have a lot more freedom than they did. And I think that I'm going through a lot less than they did. I'm not saying I don't experience it, but I don't experience as much as what they might have experienced in those days. And what I found quite interesting about the whole scenario was they brought the Windrush generation to the UK to help them fight a war. They won the war, and then it was a case of go back to your country. It was, you know, so it was it gratitude? Was it the job is done? Was it we contracted you to do that and now the contract is over? You can now go back home. So it was, to be quite honest with you, a lot of the times I used to think in my head, what could have actually been going on there. It's a shame because I had a lady who is of the Windrush generation. Her granddad is a Windrush, as in from the original boat in Tilbury, planned out to join us this evening, but she couldn't make it in the end. And she did ask us to change the date, and I was like, it's too late, it's gone out now, so it's not possible for us to do that. So a bit of history for all of us that I just pulled up very quickly on the internet, and I'm just going to read it out to us so that we have a little bit better clarity of what we mean by the Windrush that we celebrate today, and maybe we can begin to understand and appreciate the gravity of what the Windrush generation went through. One of the things I will say is, and I have to take my hat off Farani. She organized the Windrush Day, not last year, the year before, in 2019. And we went down to Tilbury and we were able to walk the same bridge that the Windrush generation people walked on when they first came off the boat. And I'm a very emotional person, and that's why I appreciate history. And you kind of like, you try to walk the walk that they walked, and you start to feel a bit of what they feel without us actually being there in reality. And the beauty of it was we had families of the Windrush generation there with us at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rani, but it was very, very emotional. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And I know that it was vandalized last year during with the Windrush celebration. I think, or was it during October, Rani, that it was vandalized? I think it was July, wasn't it? It was vandalized. I hope that is being put back together. It's just a shame that even nowadays, with the history that UK has gone through, and I think UK actually is a very unique country. And I say that anywhere. Why do I say that the UK is unique? It's unique in the sense that it's one of the most powerful countries that has embraced ethnicity in such a diverse way. If you go to other countries, without me mentioning names, there's not a lot of us that can enjoy the freedom that we enjoy in the UK. So I appreciate the UK for that, and I embrace the UK, and I'm hoping, and I'm shining the light, hoping that we will all begin to embrace the UK the way that I embrace the UK. But let me just go back there. Let me take you back in history, not from my own memory, but from the internet. Wikipedia, to be quite honest with you. So it might be right, it might be wrong. I'm told it's not 100%. So it says, on the 22nd of June, 1948, 492 Caribbean people were brought to the Tilbury Docks, Essex, in the UK on the Empire Windrush ship. News reports at the time reported that the number of people was 492, but the ship's records show that the ship was carrying 1,027 passengers. According to the passenger list, 802 of those on board the ship gave their last country of residence as somewhere in the Caribbean. After World War II, the United Kingdom's economy needed to be repaired. To do so, the British government recruited Afro-Caribbean migrants and offered them jobs. These jobs included the production of steel, coal, iron, and food, and also jobs in the service sector, such as running public transport and staffing the new National Health Service in the United Kingdom. The first Afro-Caribbean immigrant in the United Kingdom were faced with extreme intolerance from many in the white population. Although African Caribbean migrants were encouraged to settle in the United Kingdom and take up employment to relieve the labor market by the authorities, many early immigrants were denied access to private employment and accommodation because of the color of their skin. Black people were also banned from many pubs, clubs, and even churches. And now look at us occupying different positions, different occupations. Like Rani was saying, we've got doctors, we've got a deputy mayor that is of African background, and it's something worth celebrating. The way I look at it and the way I teach these kind of topics is that you've got to celebrate what you enjoy, because somebody else in the past, way before you, has made the sacrifice, has already paid the price. So what do we do? How do we show appreciation back to the society that has actually given to us without us misusing it or misinterpreting what freedom that we actually enjoy? If you've ever watched the movie Freedom, it gives me goose pimples all the time I watch it. If you haven't watched it, please try and find some time to go and watch it. But it is completely different to the life that we live now. Completely different. Sometimes I've been embraced very well, and I thank God for that. As deputy mayor, as a Black deputy mayor in Basildon, there hasn't been one event that I've been to as deputy mayor that I've had a negative response, so to speak. So I'm really grateful for that. And that actually shows me and tells me that Basildon is ready to embrace ethnicity. We've come a long way. Since the Windrush, we have come a long way. And it's up to us now. And I see us all as actually part of the Windrush generation. So further on down the line, I used to think the Windrush generation were just Caribbean people. Actually, further research tells me that it's not just Caribbeans, it's actually incorporates the whole BAME community in one way or the other. The Windrush policy includes so much more than the Caribbeans that came off the ship in 1942. So I think the encouragement that I want to give us all as we celebrate the Windrush is remember that the freedom we all enjoy today, the price was paid by people that came before us. And we need to maximize the freedom that we enjoy today so that we can make this current world the best it can be for us, and we can create even better opportunities for the generation behind us. So yes, I'm still saying racism exists. I'm not going to dismiss that at all. It does exist, whichever way we want to look at it. But it's up to us how we not fight back. I don't want to use the word fight back, but how we respond to it. Is if you don't rise up, we won't occupy the places that we need to occupy. If you don't rise up, we won't have inspirational leaders for the generation behind us. If you don't rise up, it's going to be a cycle again. It's going to be a cycle again. And what we don't want to do as the BAME community or as Basildon side by side is end up in this shell, end up in this, it's because I'm this, is because I'm that. Being a counselor actually has been an eye-opener for me, because a lot of things that the community will count as racism, I've come to the realization that actually, no, it's not. Everybody is treated the same, especially when it comes to housing. There are no houses. So we can't house you because there's no houses. It's not about the color of your skin. So don't, a lot of things, we are all quick to jump to things and say, oh, it's racism. All of a sudden we just pull up this thing and we say it's racism. We've got to go beyond that and just try and see how we can continue to, if I go back to International Women's Day topic for this year, to break the bias. If it is a bias, you've got to keep working to break that bias. Otherwise, nobody else will. And if those, the people that came before us, if they didn't break the bias and say, actually, my forefathers came and they were put on the railway and they were doing ironry work, and no, actually, I want to be a doctor. And, I remember watching a film that was created by the BBC in the 2018 Black History Month. And the ladies were saying at the time that they've made their sacrifices they want their children to become doctors and lawyers in the UK. And that's why they're making the sacrifices. So they sent their kids to school, they gave them the best they could give them. And gradually, we started to see the BAME doctors. Gradually, we started to see the BAME lawyers. There was always a first. Gradually, we saw the first Black policeman. You know, so it was all gradual. And now we've got a society that embraces BAME. Yes, we're still yet to get to some positions, but those positions could easily be you. It doesn't have to be somebody else. You don't have to sit there and say, oh, the council hasn't got diversity. You can be the diversity in the council. You can be the diversity in the council. You can be the diversity in the House of Parliament. You can be the diversity in a hospital. You can be the diversity in in the ambulance, in the fire forces. I think the fire forces are looking for people, looking to be more diverse, but you can be that. So let's not shell away. Let's not continue to dwell on the past, and let's not continue to hang things on racism, because actually sometimes it isn't, and we've just got to find our way of working beyond that. So that's my piece to all of you, to everyone. Happy Windrush Day, and yeah, may the discussions continue.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Yetunde. Well, very well spoken. I'd like to pick up two things from what you did say, because Councillor, you did say the fact that it was not until some years back that she picked up on the Windrush story and says that it wasn't taught in school. So the question we have to ask ourselves, if a society wants to hide away the story of a group of people, how do you enrich others? Because see, society say, oh, there's an angry woman there, there's an angry man there, but you don't know their story. So, but when you now know their story, then you now know, wow, now have an idea why they're angry. You now see, there's a story in the Guardian newspaper for this month. This is the it says, Home Office tried to sanitize staff education module on colonialism. So what happened? They contracted off to an institution, to put a module on colonization and everything. And of course, these guys put it together, but the Home Office felt like, whoa, this doesn't particularly put us in good light. So they wanted them to sanitize it. What's the point I'm trying to make? If I were to advise Britain, there's no point trying to hide things about you that are not pleasant. Because the more you hide it, eventually people will discover it and their attitude might not be right. You remember Councillor talks about the fact that our attitude to what we're facing. Some people might now read history at a later age and then they'll say, burn it down. But if from a younger age, you're letting them know the things that are not very pleasant and you help them manage it, they won't get enraged. But Britain doesn't understand that. They want to hide anything that's not pleasant and say we're angelic. I'm a priest, nobody's without fault. But when you highlight your fault, it doesn't mean everything about you is bad. So I would not choose to live in any other place other than Britain because of the opportunities it's given me. So Councillor is right. It's our attitude. Because some of us, when we look at history, we feel hard done by, but our response is not particularly pleasant. So imagine I go for a job interview and I'm angry. Who's going to give me the job? They're not going to give me the job because of my attitude. I might be competent, but I cannot get on with people. Everything is racism. So who's going to get on with me? Everything is racism. They didn't give me a job interview. Everything is race. Nobody's going to get on with me. So Councillor is spot on. Our attitude is crucial. We're not denying the fact that we've been wronged, but our attitude is crucial. Some people, unfortunately, their attitude has been negative. It's been negative. Everywhere they go is negative. And also remember, it's not only us that have pain. Other people have pain. The white community, the Indian community, every community has their sort of pain. So our attitude is crucial. And that's why when we look back to the Windrush generation, you can see how the elders handle themselves with dignity, the kind of culture that passed on to the younger ones. Say, put your head down, put in the hard work, opportunity will come your way, and you will have your time to shine. Who would like to chip in? We have 17 more minutes. I'll give Rani another go in a little while. Anybody else would like to chip in? Anything based on the conversation you've had so far? Anything you would like to say? Any comments? If not, we'll get Rani to have another stab at it. Oh, Rani, you go for it then.
I've been listening to all of the comments, and one thing that I would like to say is that the Windrush generation were brought here after the war. And in my estimation, we are in another war. And that war is obviously what is happening, where people are being killed in Ukraine, where the whole of the world order is changing, where food and famine is used as a war weapon, where we're seeing people who are dying of starvation on our screens. This is the difference. In the world wars, we didn't get to see that, possibly a little bit in the Second World War, but millions of people died in the trenches in the First World War, and they were just covered up because we never saw it. So we can't say that we are not unaware of the danger that is on the horizon. The usual thing that happens in any society is to blame somebody else when something goes wrong. That is human nature. Yes. So I didn't get the job not because I failed, because I was an idiot, because I came in late. It was because that person looked different, that person knew somebody, that person, whatever it is, there's always an excuse. And I think that for side by side, we are in very, very difficult territory. We're seeing now the worst inflation, the worst energy bills. We're told energy bills will go up to £3,000 a year. We're told that mortgages will triple. We're told that food will be 50%. And I don't know about you, but I'm of the generation where the first time round, you would go into the supermarket and pick up a can of beans and come back in the afternoon, and there'd be 2 or 3 pence added onto it, and another 2 or 3 pence, and another 2 or 3 pence. We're seeing strikes. We might go back to the 3-day week. My country in Sri Lanka for 48 hours had no electricity. So people died in a country where the temperature is 40 odd degrees, and you have no respirators, you have no cardiac machines, you have nothing, no food, no water, people die. And we're not immune to that. We know very well that we have to look after ourselves. Side by side, we have come a long way, but already I'm seeing signs. I never did Facebook. I hate anything like that, but I had to join because I'm a parish councillor now, and I have to talk to people because I can't physically go out. I'm not very well, bang on doors and talk to people like I used to. And I hear and see terrible things. We are now looking at Chinese coming over. Hong Kong Chinese are British. They have British passports. But when they're landing on this country, the shores, they are blamed for COVID. We know that this new monkeypox, one of my dearest friends, who you met, his name is Justin Placide. He's the co-chair and very high up in business department. He co-chairs the civil service race group, and he is horrified and upset at monkeypox because when he was a child, people called him monkey and made those funny noises. Today, I'm looking at the polio scare. And the first thing I heard was it's coming from East London, and they trotted out. So that's where the Nigerians, and that's where the Africans and somebody other, I can't remember. I just turned off when I heard Nigerians. Because when you have people who are scared, who have to compete for housing, who are going to lose their own houses because they can't have enough money to feed their children, they will look to see who to blame. And those people that blame are people that don't look like them. So although we have Ukrainian refugees coming in, they're white and they're Christian. So they're a little bit less standing out than somebody who's yellow or somebody that's brown or somebody that's black. And for Basildon, with all of its great cosmopolitan feel, with all of the growth, I mean, I'm very excited when I see what's happening in Basildon. Every day there's a bit of art coming back. You know, some of the really horrible grotty areas are going to build up. People are going to learn about new technologies, you know, everything. That could be easily crushed, just like Windrush, the spirit and the excitement crushed when you're told you're not wanted because you're black. Like Jeff, you're not wanted because you're Irish. Yes, I don't know what the dogs did to anybody. What did a dog do? But I mean, Jeff, you and me, you know, and the rest of us, we weren't allowed to come into the party. But do you see what I'm trying to say? We now have to look at what is going to divide us. Side by side was brought into that name because that's how we have to walk together. And so look at the disparity. We know now that unemployment in young students, 50% in BAME groups, and yet there's only 16% of BAME in the entire population. So the opportunities are dwindling, and our young people are finding it more difficult. And I don't know what it is, but I do know it's coming, and it's going to be a tsunami. There's a tsunami that come winter. People are going to be very restless. They're going to be talking about the usual stuff that 30, 40 years ago we talked about. There are too many over here. It's too small in Ireland. They're taking our jobs. They're taking everything off of us. They're killing themselves in the street. You know, everything will be coming and landing on our Windrush doorstep. So we have to be strong and we have to be united. And what we have to do is to work together. So today, Yutunde and I, we were at the opening of the South Essex Islamic Trust. And that was something that was lovely because there were the police officers there. There were people from, Debbie was there, Debbie Hunt, who is a disability. And it was lovely because we stood there as the community. We are Christians, we are not Muslims, and we were welcomed with a smile. Just like if they stepped into our church, I would hope people would welcome them with a smile. Because we are common. One thing we share is we're human beings. We know the difference between bad and good, between love and hate. So Windrush, the boat arrived. I don't know if they thought that after we built up the country, we were going to go home to. And I often wonder what happened to the communities when all the doctors and all the engineers left. What happened to the country? We must have taken a lot of all of the brain power out of the countries that we took these people from. And these people are my people. But as I said, it's a salutary. We celebrate Windrush next year, 75. But I would say between now, going through one of the most difficult winters anybody is going to have to look at. I think we're going to have actually strikes upon strike upon strike. But we must start to look around and already start planning to look after the vulnerable. You know, let's go back to how we used to shop for the elderly. We used to make sure they were warm. We looked after the mothers with the children. We became the neighborhood that we are. We are stronger together, side by side. So that's the final thing I want to say and leave you with. Windrush, we are here. It is wonderful, but there are generations of Windrush still coming to be integrated. Yes, the Chinese, Hong Kong Chinese, I think it's 1.5 million that have a British passport. Are they going to be assimilated into us when we are already struggling? We have no housing. Yeah, we're struggling with all of the refugees that are coming from all over to our shores because they know that this is a country that actually accepts people. We're a loving country. Most of us are. It's only when people get scared that they start turning on each other like dogs. So thank you very much for letting me speak twice, Reverend David. Thank you, Dr. Packer. Thank you. Is Peter here? The other side-by-side director? If not, thank you very much for allowing me to come in as well. And I wish everybody a good night.
Oh, thank you for that, Rani. Because see, Rani mentions the frailty of human nature. which is something we should not discount. So what tends to happen is that where society is struggling economically, people turn on each other. But as you can tell, with the Windrush generation, despite the fact that they came at a time, and you'll be thinking, after so many years, they should have integrated into the society. They integrated in one way, but their color will not let them integrate totally because they're still seen as the other. But people who are Caucasian, who came to Britain after so many years, they've integrated. They're not seen as the other. So that's the challenge for people who have a different color. Psychologically, they have to handle themselves lest they're broken. Because when the chips are down, they are seen as the other. So you can see people who've been here for years and years, and they say, go back to your country. And they feel like thinking, you know, I've always been in Birmingham. So where do you want me to go to? So you can see. So that's why it's important. We don't discount the frailty of human nature. So we have to encourage people to build themselves up. Because we're talking about mental health. When you go places and people are saying, shoot, what does it do to your mental health? It does a lot to your mental health, but in a negative way. So that reminds us, Basildon side by side, we are a positive force. We handle things differently. You know, we're not hiding anything. We want to bring out the best in people. And we're hoping people we encounter will remind them that they have to deliver. So on that note, I'll leave the last word to the chair of Basildon side by side. We have 5 minutes to go.
All right.
So he will close us up.
Reverend, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who has spoken. Yes, thank you to Deputy Mayor Rani. Yeah, it's been fantastic. Nice to see you, Rani. I know you've had challenges, but you're a fighter. You've done very well. Thank you very much. And I will welcome everyone who has been all through. Sidra is here. Ike, Uche Adenik, Denaik, Tommy Biayo, Bintu, our supporter, always supporting us, Councillor Jeff Henry. Now, I think, before I close, I've got a few minutes. Before I close, I will probably mention the war we just came out of, which is the COVID pandemic that killed, you know how many people who died in this country. I remember in Basildon, there was a time, I mean, myself and the few, predominantly Black health professionals, I know we vaccinated over 200,000, residents of Basildon. In the middle of the pandemic, there was nothing like racism. Everyone was fighting to get vaccinated because no one wants to die. And I remember I never had sleep. I and my colleagues just to save lives. We know what we did, obviously, to the communities in Basildon, and we did exceptionally well. We had a good coverage. We saved lives. NHS, I mean, if you withdraw the BAME in NHS, NHS will collapse. There's a lot of people. It's not just in the health sector. We have the nurses, we have the professionals in the lawyers, the project managers, the priests. Anything you do to contribute to the development of the country, I mean, you should be recognized. And I know when people work together, it's so nice. But I think it's the ones who don't quite understand that, peak it is, cast aspersion at things people do. But obviously, at the end of the day, we have people who have done great jobs in this country, I mean, who are from ethnic minority. And this is what we're trying to celebrate as well, side by side. I mean, this will bring communities together because we see the value and the strength in doing things together. No matter our diversity is actually our strength. And yes, the last Queen's Jubilee, I mean, the picnic, I know other people who came could see how our differences were celebrated together, you know, to honor the royal family. I mean, it's to Queen, I mean, Platinum Jubilee. It was so nice, but a lot of work goes into that. So I think we should, as individuals, as communities, hold ourselves high. We shouldn't be stopped by any of those racism or any negative thing that hinders. Be focused. You will always achieve your potential in this country. And we thank United Kingdom provided that, but it's a lot of work. I know being a BAME, some people may have to do a little bit more to get the same results compared to the Caucasians. But at the end of the day, it's a place where we can celebrate ourselves, achieve our potentials, and also carry the younger ones along, to do the same. So in as much as we celebrate the Windrush, we remember the negative, but there's a lot of positives we could do to build our communities and, fight crime, fight social isolation, be happy and celebrate ourselves at the end of the day. I thank everyone who has attended this event and everyone who has spoken and everyone who has listened. I thank you so much. And Reverend, you've done a very good job moderating this. You are really a priest. I thank the Deputy Mayor, I thank Councillor Jeff. I know I've mentioned names. I mean, Chante, Rani, Sidra, Tommy Biayo, Adenik, Yusufu, Uche Ike, Chantal, and then Uchiamaka Uyedeka, Olayinka. I know what you did at the picnic as well. Your contribution was well recognized. I thank everyone. Sidra, I know you just came on board, but we've almost finished. Did you want to say one? Take a minute. I know you.
Yes, I have been on here since 8 o'clock.
I remember. Yeah.
But I'm in the car, you see, so I had my camera off. I've just taken my camera. I've just put my camera on now to say goodbye to everybody. But I was listening to everything since 8 o'clock.
I do recognize your presence. But obviously, I mean, it's been a good time. It's been a fantastic time, and it's also been an enlightening moment for everyone. So now we can talk about Windrush. We understand why we celebrate that, and then we'll continue to work together and positively to build our communities. Thank you very much, everyone.
Dr. Packer, can we just mention that it's the Queen's Jubilee and that can we wish Her Majesty as much good health as she has at her age? Yes. And to say thank you for the 70 years of service that she has given this country.
Thank you.
May we say, God save the Queen.
Yes, God save the Queen. Everyone say.
God save the Queen.
Thank
God
you.
save the Queen.
God save the Queen. Thank you very much for that, Fanny. Yeah. Thank everyone. Okay, and then you stay safe, look after yourself, and regards to everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very
much. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
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 I don't know how to leave her there. I don't know how to say goodbye.
You're still live.
I know, I don't know how to go away. I hope I'm not going to die to have to leave. Zoom.
I'm trying to stop the recording. Live stream. Oh my God.
Zoom. Right. So